Type it out loud in lines so clear. Celebrate the script that's here. Automate our tasks today. It's PowerShell's birthday. Happy Shell Day. Run the script. Faster code with every sprint. Happy Shell Day. Break the mold. Techno beats and powers bold. From a command line deep in code. Write a function, let it load. Modules running smooth and free. It's PowerShell's special spree. Happy Shell Day, run the script. Faster code with every sprint. Happy Shell Day, break the mold. Techno beats and powers bold.
Awesome. Yeah. Welcome. Heiko here from Scriptrunner. Welcome to a very special Inside IT Automation live stream celebrating 18 years of PowerShell. And look at all the great people who are here joining us. So first of all, thanks a lot for taking the time and to celebrate this awesome automation technology, and I think it would be interesting to hear some backstories, how you all started using PowerShell. I think it's going to be very interesting, especially to talk and hear from Bruce how it all started when you first met Jeffrey Snover and how all the journey started. But before we do that, again, thanks for everyone who is here on the panel, so to speak, everyone for joining the live stream. And we already have a little comment here from Richard saying, wow, hard to believe it's been that long already. Yeah, 18 years. And I mean, and it started before, right? So I guess we're also going to hear a little bit about what happened before when it still was Monad. So yeah, but before we start, as I just said before we start a live stream, talk over each other because we're doing a PowerShell party. Let's make a little round of introduction. I would say we just start as the video appears here. So maybe Chrissy, you want to start? Give a short introduction for people who might not know you very quickly.
Hello, my name is Chrissy Lemaire. I actually got involved with PowerShell in 2005. I am from Louisiana, which is why you hear this accent, but I currently live in Belgium. And the biggest module that I've created is DBA tools. I also have not one, but 2 books, and I write for Manning Press. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Alexander.
Hello, my name is Alexander Nikolic. I'm a PowerShell and Azure trainer. I started using PowerShell when it's still called Monad. Maybe later I will share how I really started with it, because I think it's kind of fun. And that's it. I mean,
All right.
Hear some stories later.
Thank you. Harm.
Harm Veenstra, typical Dutch name. Consultant, blog a lot about PowerShell and PowerShell MVP since this year, and started using PowerShell from Monad as well. Yep.
Awesome. Matthew, please.
Work as a consultant, been an author, do the weekly PowerShell newsletter that goes out that is really done by you guys and the community, just putting things together for others to see. And I've been using PowerShell all the way back since then. Moved from VBScript to PowerShell.
Oh yeah!
Awesome, Bruno.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
I'm using PowerShell since 2007, and my main focus is automation and teaching people how to use PowerShell.
All right. Thank you. Jeff, do you want to be the next one?
I don't know if that can. Oh, maybe you can't see that with my background.
We cannot see it.
Invisible Man.
Most book. Well, yeah, this the PowerShell TFM books.
All right.
Well, the first book that was published, really, not counting the O'Reilly book on Monet, but this is what kind of started my PowerShell journey, and PowerShell has been very good to me. I would have had a very different career if it weren't for people like Bruce and Jeffrey Snover and
Right.
Lee Holmes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
That was the first book with the PowerShell in title.
And,
Yes.
and I think that what you just said is probably true for everyone who's here. So let's hear from Bruce, a short introduction.
Okay, I'm Bruce Payette. I'm a founding member of the PowerShell team, and I was the technical lead on the language design and the runtime. And I've been using PowerShell since 2002. So.
Nice, thank you. Guy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Guy Leach, end user computing focused person doing PowerShell mainly for software vendors rather than those end customer things. Sounds like I'm the new boy though. I've only been doing it for about 10 years, although I wrote my first code in 1980, so perhaps I've been doing the development a little bit longer than some.
All right, great. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so I would really like to start with Bruce. Like, do you remember when the first time you met Jeffrey Snover or you came across the idea of Monad / PowerShell?
Sure. It was a sort of strange arrangement at Microsoft at the time. I was working for the India Development Center in Redmond, which is what it was called. And they had done a survey to find out what Windows was lacking from an IT pro perspective. And the response was that they needed a better shell so you do more automation. It was being run by a gentleman named Daryl Ray. Daryl knew Jeffrey, and he got us together, and magic happened.
Awesome. Sorry, Damien. I just, because there's so many people in the backstage, I didn't see you. Sorry.
No worries.
Now we have Damien also with us. So please give us a short introduction.
Sure. I'm not as new as some, but I'm newer than others. But I started out in Monad as well, and didn't really see much in it because it was kind of weird to me because I, started in Windows and GUI interfaces and things like that. So to me, command line was a bit strange. But with Exchange 2007 and obviously to today, it's been very useful. And like Jeff said, my career would be a lot different without PowerShell for sure, because it's made my life so much easier. I mean, yesterday I was kind of joking with some people, the stuff that I do with PowerShell, like, yeah, stop that. I mean, it makes life so much easier for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so I would say let's make another round again, starting with Chrissy. So, how did you get involved with PowerShell?
You're muted.
I think you're muted.
Thank you. So in 95 or 96, I had got on IRC and they had some egg drop bots. And I was like, man, that's awesome. How, because even that was automation. And I wanted to know how it was done. Then I had to learn Linux. I loved shells. And then I got into VB script because I loved Microsoft and scripting. But it was so, man, just you have to type so very much. It wasn't that powerful. And then I lived in LA, and there was the Professional Developers Conference, which I think is called Build now.
Yeah,
and,
PDC was the name, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to PDC, and I looked through the little thing, and Jeffrey Snover and maybe Bruce were talking, or maybe it was Jim. And I was like, hell yeah, Microsoft. I love Microsoft. I love shells. Doing this together is going to be great. And I went there, admittedly had a hard ass time moving from VB script to PowerShell. And I really, even though I tried really hard for a couple years, I mostly started working with it on a daily, regular basis in 2014 or 2011. So until then, I was just trying, and then I finally succeeded.
Awesome. So, Alexander, how did your journey started
So,
with PowerShell?
I was into Batch and Windows scripting host at the time when we had only 4 news groups dedicated to it.
Nice.
And it was kind of a interesting, but at the same time, as Chrissy said, kind of a hard to work with certain things, especially with WMI. It was kind of a lot of things that you need to do before you actually run something that it's useful. And I didn't like that experience at all. So after some time, I kind of stopped doing it. And then I've heard about something called Monad. And at that time, Serbia was still on some blacklist together with some bad countries, and I couldn't get my hands on it. So I needed to write email to my American friend to download it for me and send it to Serbia.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
So,
dedication.
Underground movement.
So I got it, and I kind of started looking at what is possible to do with it. Look, it came with some docs, I think like maybe 4 docs or something. And I was really disappointed. It looked like something that it's created for developers. And I didn't understand it fully, to be honest. And I said, like, maybe it will be better a little bit later. It's kind of a early stages still of it. And I will put bookmark on it, but I will wait. So I stopped using Monad, and then they released it as a PowerShell. And I downloaded them, and did I change or they really change it? But it kind of clicked, which is just interesting, right? Something probably changed very much between the first version of Monad and the first public version of PowerShell, right? For me, the breaking point was when Quest released commandlets for managing Active Directory, because that was my main thing at that time. And I finally found like a real reason to use PowerShell, not just for fun and research and investigating stuff, but for doing something that's valuable to my company. And that helped me to kind of go over those repeated tasks that I needed to do manually in a GUI that I always kind of hated because it was slow. And those Quest AD commandlets were kind of, for me, the changing point of PowerShell. Everything after that was kind of natural, but that was something that really changed things for me.
Okay, interesting.
I do want to echo something real quick. The module that changed it all for me in 2011 was SharePoint, because like that helped me persist and actually push through and learn and stick with it and understand. So it'd be interesting to hear what module other people, what was the turning point for them.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so maybe we can hear from Harm.
Well, I have the same experience as Alexander. The Quest tooling for Active Directory was my first biggest step in actually creating a lot of scripts for user creation, group deletion, whatever. And the Exchange commandlets, of course, because Exchange and PowerShell from 2007 or 2010, that's PowerShell. And you couldn't manage your Exchange server without it. So, yeah.
Awesome. So Bruce, because Alexander just said, he looked at Monad and then he was like, and then he found version 1. So was there really some big differences that made PowerShell 1 just even more useful?
It was more complete. The early betas, especially the first beta that we put out, was not very good. It had a lot of bugs. It didn't work very well, but we put a lot of polishing and then writing the commandlets, that the minimum set of commandlets that people would need to be able to do anything. So we never did do the Active Directory commandlet or module, but
Bruce, could you share a story about extension for PowerShell scripts? Or how they moved from...
Oh, yes, the .ps1. Yeah, so this was in sort of the what turned into Vista timeframe. And that was when .NET was getting started and when XP was released. One of the things that they discovered with XP was that Windows didn't crash that much anymore because it was a real operating system. It would hang though. So anybody who had a plugin, and it would always hang in plugins, it would hang in IE. I think it was the biggest one that we worried about. And so PowerShell, well, we had to have some way of adding commands to it. And so this all fell into what they call versioning, and versioning continues to be a pain in the ass. So we had to come up with a strategy and go before the core architecture team that were doing all the tenants for Vista, all the minimum requirements for Vista. And they said that we couldn't have a plugin. And we thought, well, that's kind of unfortunate. It will very much limit what we can do. Then we proposed the snap-in model that's used by MMC, and that was accepted as a reasonable solution. But we still had to have some way of covering our butts in case we got everything wrong. And so the .ps extension had a number added to it to be a version. We never expected to change the number, and we never did. But that number was there so that you could have a .ps1 and a .ps2 and a .ps3 loading different interpreters. It would have been a mess. It would be a huge mess. Because then, well, we'd have to have different modules. Just everything would have been very, very confusing.
Yeah, that's the reason why also version was part of the path to installation directory, right?
Still confuses people to this day.
Yes, to this day. Yeah. I installed PowerShell 2. Where is it?
Yeah.
You'll say
why does it say
one in the path?
Yes.
But it's like Formula One, the best is always the one, right?
First to best.
Okay, thank you. So Jeff, I think do you have any problem with the stream, or can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, let's talk about your first experience with PowerShell and which module made it for you when you started.
Well, I had been doing a lot with VBScript up until that time. That's how I met Don Jones, and we'd written a VBScript book together. And Don, as most people know, was the first follower for PowerShell, and he was going to write a book on PowerShell and asked me to co-author with him. So that was really my first foray into the topic. And the best way to learn something is to have to present on it or write about it. So I'm writing and learning it at the same time. And I just basically knew a little bit more, just that much more than anyone else reading the book. So that was a challenge, like Chrissy experienced, trying to get your head around what this PowerShell thing is, because I had come from a VB script and a batch file. And so like many people still coming to PowerShell, I had my own ideas about what PowerShell, how it should behave. And so it took even me quite a while to kind of get my head around, oh, now I understand how this goes. And to be honest, I'm not even sure after writing that first book if I truly understood what this thing was. I think it was much later that everything kind of fell into place. In terms of modules and tooling, yeah, the Active Directory stuff from Quest was really a big thing. I think that was the first PowerShell related topic book that I wrote. I wrote a whole book on using the Quest commandlets with PowerShell. And then when Microsoft released their Active Directory module, then I did a second edition and went through and said, okay, this is how you would do this task with the Quest commandlets. This is how you do it with the AD commandlets. And so that book was quite popular for a while until the Quest commandlets. I think you can still get them, but you really have to dig down hard to find them. And nowadays everyone uses the AD commandlets. But
yeah,
that was really the big for me, because I was doing a lot of AD stuff at the time. And so being able to manage AD from PowerShell was a real, kind of a game changer for me.
Cool. And the funny thing is, for me, I mean, we are in 2024, but I still, when I look at what we do with our customers, most of them start using PowerShell with AD still, even though we all talk about cloud and stuff, but it's still AD that is oftentimes the starting point for the PowerShell journey, right?
Well, AD is just a prime target for automation because we're, IT pros are in it so often, and we typically have to do stuff in bulk. I need to create 1,000 user accounts. I need to change the passwords. I need to move user accounts. I want to update some attribute.
Right.
So being able to do that in bulk without having to clicky through the GUI just is a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so Bruno, how did your PowerShell journey started?
My former manager gave me the task to automate some AD stuff. And I looked on the internet, found PowerShell, downloaded it. It was really a struggle to get my first script up and running. But afterwards, it went better and better. Then I discovered the Power GUI editor. You could create Power Packs in it. And for every task I had to do, I created a small Power Pack, and it was automation in the first years. Then I had to manage Exchange, and Exchange has PowerShell out of the box. And then my journey started. Every day PowerShell since 10 to 15 years. So it's really, really nice. The best module for me is the Quest module, because it has functionalities that the Microsoft PowerShell model of Active Directory doesn't have, like group memberships and so on. By default, if you query a user and so on, it's simply the best. And everyone will have it.
So this kind of sounds like, and we're going to talk about this later as well, like with Chrissy's DBA tools module, right? So I mean, there is a Microsoft module, but there is also modules from the community or from
there is a better one
from another vendor. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right.
Same as SharePoint. PMP PowerShell is also community based.
Yeah, another very good example. Absolutely. Yeah, Matthew. So how did your PowerShell journey started?
So, like a lot of people on here, I'm sure if I ever have to do something more than 3 times, I'm writing a script for it. All right. So it started out, obviously with VBS and all those other things. And then I started in consulting. I found myself doing the same things over and over and over again. A lot of Hyper-V, AD and stuff. But what really got me hardcore into PowerShell was when I started working with System Center, especially Service Manager and Operations Manager and those type of things, going around being able to, basically repeat the same processes that I do over and over again, get that data that I know people are going to ask for, have all that, mirrored and ready to go. And then especially the SM modulates was the first one that really got me in there, because it was so much cleaner and so much prettier than the Microsoft PowerShell commandlets for Service Manager.
All right, thank you. So Guy. Yes, that's true.
Not now though. Yeah, like I said at the start, wrote my first code in 1980 on a Commodore PET that my late COBOL coding father used to bring back from his office, which kind of got me into computing, and I did a computer science degree, and I spent 6 years writing Unix device drivers in C and in C++. So I got a coding background, and then I got into this end user computing stuff, Citrix, and more recently AVD, VMware, etc. Lots of automations in there where it was batch, then it was Kickstart, if people remember that, and
oh yeah,
yes. And then I was aware of PowerShell and sort of, oh yeah, must learn this. But then it was always the case of, I've got to do this and I've got to do it really quickly. Right, I'm going to do it in batch, or I'm going to do it in VBS. I haven't got time to learn this PowerShell thing, because I think we can all agree it's got a little bit of a steep learning curve. But once you're up there, it's all easy, dare I say it. And then eventually I thought, right, I need to bite the bullet, which was in 2014 when I was doing some automation for a customer. I thought, yeah, I better do this. And the kind of shell I'm used to, because I was using Bourne and Corn shells back in the 80s. So yeah, and I'm just using it and loving it, and hopefully sharing useful bits and occasional bad dad joke. Not that there's a good dad joke. And then try and get people converted to use it as well. So people have problems or stumbling blocks, then try my best to make sure that people are using this great technology.
Awesome. All right, Damien.
Yeah, so my adventure started with Exchange because I have an Exchange background. I started Exchange 4.0. So when 2007 came out and had PowerShell in there, we were like, oh, this is this cool little toy. And then realized it wasn't just a toy, it was something we had to use to make Exchange work properly. So it kind of it was trial by fire, right? We learned as much as we could, as fast as we could. And then that bled into AD, and then people have mentioned the Quest modules, and that was definitely a good starting point for managing AD. And then Microsoft came out with theirs, and since then I've been using for all kinds of tasks. Like Matthew said about if it's a repeatable task, there's a script made for it. Mine was the Exchange prerequisite script that I made. It's now probably 10 years old at this point, but anytime I installed an Exchange server, I needed a script, and it would do everything for me, reboot the server, yada, yada, yada. And then it would check to make sure all the prereqs were there, so I didn't have to do any hard work, like actually trying to download something, install it. It would do all that, and then I could go on to my job of building the server out and doing all that. But now I use it for things like reporting or checking to make sure that third-party tools are doing their job, which I just literally did yesterday, where we're doing migrations for people from cloud to cloud, and things were copying, right? So we could actually use PowerShell to deep dive into, say, a mailbox, right, and find out their contacts are there or whatever it is, and we can use it for importing, exporting, Intune configurations. There's all manners of things that I'm poking around. So now we've got Graph, we have SharePoint Online, Exchange Online. Entra now has its own module, which is awesome. So for me, it's just finding the tool that does the job that I need to get done, because I hate clicking buttons. I used to like it when I started out. Now I hate it. It's repeatable, like Matt said again, I need a script. I can't click any more buttons anymore. So so
Awesome.
PowerShell solves me that hassle.
I think Guy wanted to interrupt.
Well, it
Yeah,
makes
sorry.
me think that. Yes. No, I was just going to say, I think the common theme here is that we're all really lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great motivation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So I don't want to do this manually. Let's spend 4 years automating this 4-minute task. But one has to be a little bit pragmatic. But definitely laziness.
The clever way of doing things, right? And I can relate to what Damien said, because I started with Exchange 2007 and with PowerShell. And actually, I have to admit, I didn't get it at the beginning, because I was wondering, why a command line tool now? But after I had to make some changes, I think it was SMTP ports changing on multiple Exchange servers, it kind of clicked and say, okay, this is much better than clicking through the GUI 5 times or 10 times and doing with the shells. So that was for me kind of also the beginning of my PowerShell journey. Yeah. So are there any stories, any projects, any achievements where you had like, wow, this was really awesome. This is like a goosebump moment where I said, wow, I could do this with PowerShell. Is there anything particular that comes to mind?
Before we move to that, while we are talking about Exchange, I wanted to mention that we learned later that Exchange practically saved PowerShell ass.
Pretty much.
Because, Bruce will kind of know better details about all that, but without Exchange, we would not actually be here today.
Yeah. What happened is, as I mentioned, we were in the Vista timeframe, and originally everything in Vista was going to be written with .NET, and it caused so many problems, and it was so difficult to develop because you had to reboot your computer every time you wanted to test something, that in the end, the core architecture team said, no managed code in Windows. You cannot have a Windows component that ships with managed code. And since PowerShell was all managed code, that would be bad for us. But Exchange said they would ship it anyway because they really needed it. They really needed to have a way to automate the system. And they contributed, like we got a lot of the initial customer feedback came from Exchange admins. Vivek Sharma and Mihai were the people on the Exchange team that we work with, and they were wonderful partners.
And when I interviewed Jeffrey Snow a few weeks ago, I read the Shell of an Idea book again, and I came across this part where someone from another Microsoft team said, asked Jeffrey, do you know that the reason why Microsoft could go to the cloud with Exchange Online was because of PowerShell, because that was the only way to automate and to scale into the cloud as they needed it, right?
Right. You cannot scale GUIs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
sorry, I was going to say, because I work predominantly with software vendors, I try and encourage them now to be PowerShell first with any feature, so that either PowerShell or API first, so they can drive it and then build GUIs on top of that to make sure that any functionality can also be automated, whether it be directly via REST, which you can do through PowerShell, or through PowerShell commandlets to make it a bit easier.
Yeah, that was always the model. Do it first from a command line, and then layer the GUI on top of that just leverages what you've already done.
And I think what I found interesting back then with Exchange was that you could do it with the GUI, and then the last tab, you saw the actual PowerShell code that you could use the next time you wanted to do it, you want to automate it, right? So it was a great way of kind of learning and seeing, okay, I just did this through the GUI, and and that's how I can do it in the future with PowerShell. It's kind of
and then they removed that feature, which was great.
Yeah, that's
sorry, sore point for me.
Yeah. True. Because
too.
This is really like, okay, people saw it, and seeing is believing, right? So to actually see, okay, I could do the same thing just by running this one-liner or this snippet, really helped me also to better understand how I can use it. So yeah, it's a pity that it went away for sure. Yeah.
No. Maybe it's not a bad idea to right now mention some editors that vendors created while we waited for PowerShell ISC to be developed. Because at the beginning of PowerShell, there was a great need for a PowerShell dedicated editor, right?
That's Power GUI.
And then we got Power GUI from Quest, and then we got PowerShell Plus.
Sapien something,
Mother, and then Sapien Primal Script.
Yep.
You remember those?
Yeah, I worked, Don and I were working at Sapien when PowerShell came out. And so when I remember, talking with Alex at Sapien and trying to get them to recognize that PowerShell was a thing and we needed to support it. And so, so eventually they morphed that after Don and I had left into PowerShell Studio, which is still available. And it's still important was it allowed you to easily build WPF front ends with the GUI. So that was a big feature for PowerShell Studio at the time.
Do you remember those days when they released the first version of PowerShell ISC and it had 3 panes instead of 2?
Yep.
That strange one in the middle that can kind of show you code that you run from the editor or from a terminal.
Yep.
I remember it crashing every single time if you made a for each with the same variable name.
Really?
And it would crash it every single time.
Wow.
That design was one of the strangest, really.
Yeah, but once IC came out, I remember just customizing the heck out of it because once I discovered the object model and where I could configure the IC and do things with code, then that was a game changer for me.
Right. Yep. And it was also fun, not just usable, but it was fun to play with that object model.
Yeah, I added all sorts of menu shortcuts and added snippets, and I just customized the heck out of it. I still have a module up in the PowerShell gallery for managing and customizing the ISE. It's just sitting there. I don't think anyone's really using it because we've moved on from the ISE. At least most people have.
Did we?
Tobias did amazing thing with the ISC steroids, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
All those changes in a PowerShell ISC that no one actually kind of were aware that it's even possible.
Mhm.
I remember that at those times I kind of talked to some PowerShell team members, and they're like, we didn't know this is possible. Like, we didn't know that you can actually have those kind of customizations and going that deep, because I think Tobias used a lot of internal private
Yeah.
things there that Microsoft would never do for kind of a
Mhm.
public releases kind of thing. So
ISC Steroids was the first one to make formatting a lot better, just like you
Yes.
can do in Visual Studio Code now.
Yeah.
It was so great because it formatted my scripts perfectly instead of indenting them myself. So yeah, really like that.
How did Microsoft react on that, Bruce? Was this something like a welcome competitor, so to speak, or?
No, it was more like they were doing our job. And that was a good thing, right? Because all that we invested in ISE up to a certain point, and then didn't do much more with it. So PowerShell Steroids added a ton of features that we would have liked to have added in ISE. So we were thrilled when it came out.
Okay, which came out, and I think maybe there would be. I can just quickly just show this little timeline that we created. So this is actually 2012, right? Where with PowerShell 3, where ISE got introduced, which was, I guess, a great step forward, especially for managing writing scripts in a much better way, right? Yeah. So, but as we see, it took a while to get there. So, but then other things also, of course, came to PowerShell.
PowerShell remoting in PowerShell 2 was a great thing. For me, probably the best feature ever. In first version, there was only one commandlet that could target remote machine. Do you remember what that was?
Get to be my object.
Exactly. That's the only one that had dash computer name parameter.
I think get service and get.
It was my favorite at that time, really, because like I really like that I can easily target remote machine from my own admin station.
Yeah, I did a session, an early tech ed session on the advantages of using PowerShell or why you should go to it. And the big thing was I talked about, here's how I would do some management tasks with VB script and WMI, and showed all the code that would require. Christy probably remembers how ugly that code would have been. And then it was probably like maybe 50 to 100 lines. And here I can do the same thing in PowerShell with, a handful of lines of code and get the same results, if not better. And that was it was a huge session. There's a lot of people at that session because there was a lot of interest as what is this PowerShell thing and why should I use it? So being able to use WMI as an object instead of parsing text, that was a huge game changer.
Yeah. I mean, the first version of PowerShell had only 128 commandlets.
Yep.
And get WMI object was the most powerful one.
Yep.
And then PowerShell remoting changed everything in version 2. Right.
So Bruce, you wanted to? I thought you just wanted to jump in and mention something.
Oh, I was just going to say, from a user's perspective, I would call PowerShell version 2 the actual version 1.
Yep, I would
What
too.
we shipped for 1 was so limited. It was a proof of concept. It wasn't really that useful of a tool. But PowerShell 2 added the stuff that was missing. Remoting, in particular, was something that we had designed way back at the beginning of the project, and we just didn't have time to do it. We didn't have time to implement it. So
was PowerShell 2 the one that started loading modules on demand as they were, as the commands
I think that's
were
3.
required?
That was PowerShell 3.
Yeah,
Got
PowerShell
it.
3.
Yeah, Lee had to do that in PowerShell 3.
But the time of PowerShell 3, which was 2012, the number of modules in server increased so much they needed to add auto-loading feature.
Right.
Otherwise, we will wait for a couple of minutes for PowerShell to load everything. And And I
And
remember
you-
some people actually disabled that feature at the beginning because they didn't like
Oh
a
my
change.
God. Wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, the problem with auto loading though is you don't know what you're getting. So it's very convenient from a user perspective, but having explicit dependencies is more reliable as a developer.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I say always test when you're about to release something on a clean machine with a clean profile. And yeah, oh, it works on my machine.
Which is nowadays also very easy with the Windows Sandbox, which I learned from Harm just a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And I'm using it.
That's
ever
my
since.
playground. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I need to research this. The Windows
Yeah,
Sandbox.
Windows Sandbox. Oh yeah, it's a great thing that people are kind of not using as much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Harm has a great article about that. Also a script, how he prepares the machine with all the, I think even the WinGet stuff pre-configured. I use this all the time now, so it's really cool.
Okay, you actually listen to me.
Jeff,
sometimes I learn something really.
Right? Jeff, do you have a module of working with the Sandbox?
Yeah, I was just going to grab the link here.
I think you have, right?
Called Windows Sandbox Tools.
Yeah.
Find it in GitHub.
It's on PowerShell Gallery, right?
Yeah, it's in the gallery, and let me find the.
Yeah, and if you have the link, I can put it into the chat.
You can share it
for everyone. Yeah, that would be cool.
So
yeah,
kind of having your own private data center though, like I do. I've moved away from rack mounts in my garage now. I've just got a PC running Hyper-V, but so I can have VMs for all sorts of things. Although apparently it's something called the cloud, where somebody else runs the computers. I don't know.
Yeah, this is just a one summer fashion thing, like the internet. It will go away very quickly. Of course. Yeah. So what we're already talking a little bit about tips and tricks and stuff. So is there anything where you say maybe somebody is starting to learn PowerShell or wants to do more with it? Any tips and tricks?
Control space. How many people do you show control space to that go, wow, I didn't know about this, which is basically tab completion on steroids.
Yeah.
It's fantastic and so great for exploring commandlets, parameters, files, you name it, control space will complete it.
Yeah, for the win, of course, absolutely. So Chrissy, from your side, any tips, tricks where say, wow, this is how you can even more improve the way you work with PowerShell. Besides using, of course, if you're managing SQL Server, using DBA tools, right? I mean, that's a given, right?
I would have to say that when developing, I don't really have tips and tricks specifically for PowerShell itself, but as a developer, I've started using dev containers, and that's really enhanced my entire workflow when developing entire modules. And I do want to throw in that for people who are advanced with PowerShell, there's something called Aider, which it's a command line tool that hooks into AI models like Claude or like GPT-4, and it's absolutely incredible when mixed with PowerShell. So you can take PowerShell and do a loop and go and make those calls and come back. So you should totally explore that. Again, it's called Aider. So that's the first one. And then the second one is if you are doing a lot of development and making entire modules, look into dev containers. Brett Miller actually introduced them to me, and now I'm super addicted. It gives you that clean environment that y'all were talking about. And so in addition to that, I'm also going to go and look up the Windows sandboxes, but that's the way that I personally sandbox right now is with dev containers within a Git repository.
And a GitHub code spaces.
Yes,
can
good.
Give you that kind of experience.
And the first one you mentioned, Aider, is it?
Aider.
AI.
It's Yeah, AIDER. It's a command line tool.
Okay.
So it is Python, and I'm trying to wrap it, but there's a lot that goes into it. But it's a command line tool that, I'll give you an example of how I'm using it. So we have in DBA Tools an awesome test suite that has about over 6,000 pester tests in 700 files. All of those right now are Pester V4 because we all got together as a team, maybe 2017, 2019, and developed all of our tests then. But then whenever V5 came out and it had these breaking changes, how are you going to get 2 people? Because it's open source, it's free, it's volunteer, right? How are you going to get so few people to change each of the things that you need to change to get Pester V4 tests to work on V5? And so we just never did it up until this very day. We still have V4. And then I discovered Aider, and I was able to take a whole bunch of instructions, right? I went and I got the best practices. And what I would do, I would say for each test, star.test.ps1 in our test directory, do these instructions. So start it out with this parameter, move everything into the before all. So I gave it all of the things that were required, and I ran it 700 times against each of our commands. Now I will say you do have to build it up over time. So the story is actually that I did it to 1 and then 2 and then 5 and then 20. And I eventually built up a really beautiful prompt. But we'll be done with that migration in probably about a month or so. And I'd have had it before if I wouldn't have gotten so distracted with other things. But to me, Aider is like the PowerShell of PowerShell. It allows you to automate PowerShell itself. It's something that's really incredible.
All right. Good to know. So we are learning a lot of interesting new stuff here.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Alexander, from your side.
So now that Chrissy mentioned AI, for me was a challenge when I started using a ChatGPT to get some help with the PowerShell code. And I realized that when I'm asking things about core PowerShell stuff, the answers are much better because there are more good examples in the world than if you ask something about, let's say, Microsoft Graph PowerShell, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how it was a year and a half ago when I started using it. And it's like, okay, can I kind of improve the responses somehow? Is there a way for me to customize the ChatGPT model to give me better answers? And I created a PowerShell persona. So every time when I start my prompt with a -pwsh, it knows that it's not just a regular model. It's not a regular assistant. It's a PowerShell expert with a knowledge of foundational PowerShell team members. Practically, it's a Bruce Payette. And quality increased so much.
Wow.
Seriously, I'm not joking about that. Like the accuracy of a code that was produced after creating that persona is just amazing, that I'm not asking the generic model anymore. I'm always using the / command that I created for it, and it puts it in a mode that I kind of convince it that it knows PowerShell better than it actually does. So that's kind of a small change without any code. You just change the system prompt and you create that persona. And I have it not just for PowerShell, I have it for editing abstracts, for comics that are kind of one of my interests, and some things for kind of pretending that it's a German professor when I'm learning German and stuff. So it's quite interesting how you can create a bunch of those personas, and then that will increase the quality of the responses.
Amazing. Harm, is there anything from your side you want to?
Or for learning or for?
Yeah, for tips and tricks to improve the use of PowerShell. Besides, of course, reading your blog, of course.
That's the best starting point, obviously. Pointing people to the Microsoft Learn documentation and the courses in it, because people seem to forget that Microsoft actually has good learning courses on everything, including PowerShell. And yes, that would be the better starting point.
Awesome.
RTFM.
Also add that
Yeah,
you can,
that's not what IT people usually do, of course, Guy. But yeah,
so that you can update that for yourself as well too. So if you see a mistake on Microsoft Learn or see it's not
Yep.
doesn't have something in there, you can
Yep.
submit to Microsoft to get that added.
yeah, it's all GitHub, right? So yeah,
Yep.
you could do your own pull request on it. Yeah.
So Bruce, when PowerShell was introduced, and I think there was a lot of effort in getting people to learn PowerShell. Was this really an emphasis on that? So really make sure that besides the developer community, to really make sure the system engineer, the IT administrators, they are welcome, and they are really, it's really easy for them to start using it.
Yeah, one of the targets for PowerShell was to create a tool that was easy to use, but also useful to developers to be able to write more complex scripts.
Yeah.
And so the noun, verb, the pluralization, lack of it. So we did a lot of things that were designed to make it easier to learn. But there was a lot more that could be done too. So I think.
Yeah, but here we are 18 years later, and millions and millions of people are using it, are happy with it, and still things are happening, right?
You also, Bruce, the team made a smart decision in the early versions in building a help system and having someone like June write help content.
Yeah, June was awesome.
You didn't have to go searching
Yep.
the internet, like, how do I use this thing? There was useful information right there at your fingertips.
Which has its own story.
Yeah.
The PowerShell help is written in MAML, which is Microsoft Assistance Markup Language.
Yeah.
Which we were the only people who ever used it. It was new in Vista, and everybody was supposed to write all their help in it, getting away from the old style help files. So we wrote all their help, and then they decided not to use it for anything else. There's clunky schema that the pain to use.
Oh yeah, I remember trying in the early days trying to write my own help documentation, and it was just trying to reverse engineer that MAML format was painful. I destroyed my liver so badly, drinking so heavily, trying what the heck is going on here?
I think comment-based help was one of the best things that happened to us.
Yeah.
Right? Just writing pure PowerShell comments, and they will be turned into a working help file that is just beautiful, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, Bruno. How
Tips
about
and
you?
tricks.
Tips and tricks.
Get help, get command, show command is also a nice one. And read the online Microsoft articles and blog posts, and ordered a poster from Skiptoner, which is good.
Shameless plug.
It's interesting with because of get command, you got a certain amount of help for a commandlet for free. And one of the things that we had to be very aware of with the help for version 1 was that most people didn't use it. They used get command, and it was enough from the name and the parameters to figure out what was going to happen, what it was going to do. And so we weren't using our own help as much as we should have.
Yeah, because the commandlet already did the job, right? In many cases.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Matthew, what's your take on tips and tricks?
So one of the things that I don't see very often when I look at other scripts and things, and so I'm not sure how many people are aware, but using expressions inside group object and sort object. Right? So if you need to actually manipulate something inside your script to sort it a certain way, we've all been there, right? I need to have this one at the top, but it's not alphabetically. You can actually put expressions next to group object instead of just listing property names in there, which makes things much easier when you're using those commandlets. The other one that I don't often see people using, I think is a very underrated commandlet, is the T object. Right? So you can split off your output into the screen and into a variable or into a file, at the same time. So you're not having to double up your lines where you output ones and then write it to a file and then do all that other stuff. So.
Yeah. So just to mention,
One
I
of
think
the
it's
many
kind of
borrowed
connected
from
to
you.
that. How many of you are using dash out variable parameter?
Yeah, sometimes.
Because I really like that one for presentations because it saves me that if I assign things to a variable, then nothing is visible on the screen. I need to retype $, the name of the variable, to see what's actually assigned.
Right.
But if I use dash out variable, things are visible on the screen and they're also saved in a variable. So it's just kind of quite effective that in one line you are getting two things. One is you present the content to people that you are presenting to, and you are also saving things in a variable that you can use later for kind of similar to a T object theory, right?
I would say that's one of my two most used things is out variable and also PS default parameter values. I use all the time whenever I'm developing and when I'm presenting as well.
True.
Yeah, cool tips.
Yeah,
here.
I was going to say I use mine as pipeline variable a lot. Sorry, did I talk over then? I'll shut up.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I use mine as pipeline variable a lot now, so that when I'm using values from that command in a loop, then rather than using $_ or assigning a variable to $_ then I can just I can say minus pipeline variable Fred and then use Fred, except I would use something slightly more meaningful than Fred, in that loop. It also means if $_ I can't speak, $_ gets redefined, say in a calculated property, then there's no ambiguity over what $_ means.
Do we have any PS item variable user among us?
No.
Oh, well.
No.
I really never liked it. Never ever liked it.
Worst decision they ever made.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, that was
I'm
awful.
just curious.
I'm just curious.
Y'all are crazy. I love it.
Who is responsible?
That's actually
that's one of my that one.
That's one of my instructions in my AI code is do not use $_ use PS item. And the reason is because it doesn't look like $_ ran me off. It looked like Perl. It looked weird.
It's easy.
The $_ is obvious. It's easy.
If you know the story, why is that variable $_? Why? I mean, the name.
I shouldn't have to know a story, though. To do some PowerShell. I should see
that's one of my favorite Bruce's story is like why they name it $_.
They love Perl.
It was inspired from Perl. But the use of the @sign was sort of comes from Perl. But with $_ I think the only thing that comes from Perl.
So it's a pipe like this, like it's a pipe, and then when you do it like this, what you get?
Nice.
$_.
Yeah.
Pipeline, current pipeline object. Makes sense?
I teach it as fill in the blank. I teach it as fill in the blank. So you get an object coming to the pipeline, that object then goes into the blank with an underscore.
Too much explanation needs to be self-evident.
Yeah, you just have to learn.
If it's not intuitive, then
Okay, so let's hear from Damien. So we have made the full round, the full circle. So in terms of tips and tricks.
Yeah, so for me, the biggest one was try and catch within PowerShell because it allows me to handle things when things break. So they break, I can output that somewhere, figure out why it broke. And if it doesn't break, that's great. I can perform other tasks and let it go on its way. The other thing is having some sort of test environment, like you were mentioning, like the clean workstations, right? Having something like that is absolutely must. Even in the cloud, you have to have a free cloud environment, some kind of a dev, QA, whatever you want to call it, cloud environment, so that you can poke around and not break production. It was funny. Someone had produced a script and they gave it to me like, oh, test this out. And at the very bottom, they said, don't just run this in production. Make sure you run this in test first. So that was a very valid comment within their own script. So definitely test first and then put production. That's my biggest thing.
That's why one of my big tips is not necessarily PowerShell related.
Right.
It's kind of PowerShell adjacent, and that is make sure you're using Windows Terminal.
No.
Because then you can define profiles and different tabs, and profiles meaning Windows Terminal profiles, not PowerShell profiles. Because I have in my setup, I have PowerShell 7 with profile, without profile, Windows PowerShell with profile, without profile. So I can quickly bring up a tab, and it can be completely clean environment with no profile, and run my code all right from there. And I can do remoting stuff. I've got tabs set up to open up an SSH session to my laptop, to open up WSL connections, all in one interface. I can just go back and forth between the tab. And the really cool thing in Windows side is if you're using the command history in PS readline, in Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7, they're using the same file. And so I can be in Windows PowerShell and do something and then find that same command back in my PowerShell 7 session.
Yep.
So using Windows Terminal and different profiles is something that you should be doing. Don't be using the traditional console. Do everything in Windows Terminal.
And
when it works, I have a lot of problems with it.
Yeah. Someone made a comment about the what if as well. Sorry.
Yeah, so Richard just wrote that, and that would have been my biggest tip as well, using what if whenever possible, because I'm stupid, I'm making mistakes, so I like that. Whenever it's available. It's unfortunately, especially I think around Office 65 modules, it's not there everywhere.
Yep.
Right. It is not.
That's a pity sometimes, but
unfortunately, what if and dash what if and dash what confirm don't work very well with the Microsoft Graph PowerShell stuff.
Yeah,
they didn't understand the concept. It looks like, and also the pass through. Do you know what you get every time you use pass through in Microsoft Graph PowerShell? You get true.
Oh. Oh.
You get true. Can you imagine? That was a surprise.
Okay, so we are already over the 1 hour mark. So talking about Graph would take another hour, I guess. So so maybe we should do this another time. So to try to stay in the time frame of an hour. Maybe let's do another round for everyone. Like, okay.
Can I ask the last question? Like, do you remember your first wow moment with PowerShell? Like the first time you said really like, wow, is this possible? PowerShell did that for me. Do you remember that?
No, but I can't remember what I did last week.
While you're thinking about it, I will start. That was when a former PowerShell MVP, Mark Van Orso from Netherlands, created WMI Explorer purely in PowerShell. That was the first GUI ever that was created with just PowerShell code and nothing else. Do you remember those days?
Yep, I remember that. I saved that tool because it eventually went away. You can't find it online.
Yes.
And I saved it, and I've got a blog article somewhere where I have it as a download.
Right now, if you're interested, someone created actually even faster tool based on the Mark's work that it's available on the GitHub, and it's a exe file. It's an exe file. It's not a PowerShell script, but it's completely inspired by what Mark did. And I remember that even people in PowerShell team were surprised that it's kind of possible to build such a complex GUI.
Yeah, that was actually another interesting moment. I was experimenting with it and thought, well, if I just make this one little change, then you'll be able to get callbacks from Windows controls, and it was like a 1 line or 2 line change. But it opened the door to a huge amount of functionality, and management hated it. Jeffrey had to really work hard to get that to allow us to ship that 2 line change.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to answer what the question that Alexander asked about the wow moment?
Well, the
Chrissy?
first one for me. Oh, sorry, Chrissy, go ahead.
I can't remember the first time specifically with PowerShell. There's been thousands of wow moments, but I do remember the first time that I ever saw SQL management objects, or SMO. Whenever that object was created, it took a while to enumerate, but once it did, it was so weird to be looking at the command line and seeing SQL Server Management Studio. And I thought, this is going to be so powerful. I don't know how right now. I felt the same way about GitHub Actions and about AI. But whenever I saw SMO, that I was like, oh my God, you can just do one method and back something up. And that really opened my eyes.
Cool. Yeah, Harm.
Well, my first wow moment was actually with the first release of PowerShell. I was parsing text log files with command and batch files for months, and PowerShell fixed it in a few minutes for me what I was trying to achieve. Yep, big plus.
Regular expressions?
Without regular expressions, even, and that's one thing I still have to master. Oh, God.
Yeah, my first wow moment was when I wrote a script that worked first time. Oh no, I've not had one of those wow moments. I'm still waiting for that.
So, I'll kind of like Chrissy, I've had so many wow moments, but I think one of the big ones for me was Azure automation. Seeing that, because going from like orchestrator to SMA to finally getting a full-fledged working PowerShell up in the cloud was a huge game changer for me, because it basically made PowerShell completely portable everywhere.
Nice.
For me, it was creating a complete Active Directory from scratch with one config file and a few lines of code. That was really crazy for me.
Yeah, anything with large bulk edits, that's the wow moment. Either creating a report or making changes in bulk is always awesome, especially when we got 10 to 100,000 objects to play with.
Yeah, so maybe Bruce, maybe your famous last words, so to speak, before we wrap up the session. So I guess sitting here 18 years later, or for you even longer, sitting here and being part of creating this awesome technology together with all the community and all the stuff that happened afterwards, that must feel like totally probably impossible when you think about the time when you started it, that this would happen, right?
Yeah. It's amazing to see what people do with PowerShell, and very gratifying.
And being part of that must have been, I mean, actually being at the day one, so to speak.
Yeah, the day one was, we didn't know if we were ever going to ship. I think one of the biggest wow moment for me was one day I was working and I was able to use PowerShell as my default shell. So everything was done from PowerShell, and just the necessary functionality was there, and bang, I could do my development from PowerShell.
Yeah,
it was pretty exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think I'm sure we could talk for hours, but to kind of keep it in the 1 hour frame, we are at 1:10, which is totally fine. So I think this was really awesome. Thanks a lot for sharing all the stories, the tips and tricks, the wow moments. I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching it live or later on, of course, it's been recorded, so you can always go back and watch it again. Being here because of the invention of PowerShell, sharing these stories, automating the world is really great. So again, thanks a lot for being here in the live stream, for sharing stories, for also people who are commenting. Really great, and I guess we have to do this again. We will not wait another 18 years for sure to do that. And because we see PowerShell moving on, right? There is AI, there is the CV3 coming along, so it's alive and kicking, I would say. So I think there are a lot of more things coming, and it's really exciting to see what the future will bring for PowerShell.
Yeah.
All right. So again, I think that's it for now. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening. Have a nice.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate in this. It was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
It was good
Thank
seeing
you.
all of you again too.
Thanks for taking the time. Bye-bye. And happy
Bye.
birthday to PowerShell.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday!
And
Happy
keep on
birthday.
scripting.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.